According to Wikipedia, a love-hate relationship is an interpersonal relationship involving simultaneous or alternating emotions of love and hate, something particularly common when emotions are intense. Well, this describes my feelings about Destiny. Most of the clips used in this video are just background gameplay of Destiny 2 recorded by myself, but some of them are videos I have used from other creators. All links to those videos will be found in the description below. I have played Destiny ever since the very beginning back in 2014. For every large expansion drop, I would wake up and immediately preload the DLC onto my Xbox so I could play it when it was launch time. This game was the life of me. From the heart of the Black Garden to the Siva replication chamber, I played pretty much every bit of content available. It was sometimes rough though because I never had other friends who would play with me, and it wasn't until the launch of Forsaken until I started using the LFG Discord server to find people to play with. This meant that I had never played any of the raids or the higher level endgame content that was available. Even though I never played the endgame content, I was completely content. Every day I would hop on Destiny and just have a complete blast doing whatever I wanted. Even if I played the PvP game modes all day long, I would never get tired out or annoyed at the game. Nothing ever really felt out of balance too, even though there were meta weapons at some times. I could use whatever I wanted to and still be able to frag. And sure, the game had its issues, but Bungie always seemed to listen to the feedback and fix it in the next patch. On March 28th of 2017, Bungie dropped its final patch for Destiny 1, Age of Triumphs. This event celebrated all that we had accomplished throughout the years of Destiny. We got brand new armor variants, revised raids for new power levels, and a book of achievements that rewarded us for our past. This left the game in an amazing place, except for the PvP game modes, where they changed the anno economy. Even though this took away some of the fun and changed up the meta, I still had a bright vision for Destiny 2, which was just announced. When Destiny 2 was announced, people were excited almost everywhere. Because Destiny 1 was left off in such a great spot, that meant that Destiny 2 would surely grow off the success of its predecessor. But this didn't end up being the case. This big hyped up story of our home, the last city, being taken over and our powers being taken away turned out to be a small campaign with only 17 missions, where you had no power for only 2 of them. This, in my opinion, could have turned out to be such a great storyline, teaching us that the Guardians who protect the last city are not much different than the lightless citizens and fighters inside the city. Another missed opportunity are the planets we visit. When Destiny 2 was first announced, they mentioned how we could explore the planets while coming across little camps and small civilizations of humans, but this turned out to just be one vendor per planet with a small map to explore. The gun system was also very poorly fleshed out, with there only being 2 slots for primary weapons, while every decently large weapon like snipers and shotguns needed to be in the power slot alongside with rockets and grenade launchers. This was very disappointing because before weapons like these were in the secondary slot, available to be used whenever you had the right ammo, but now you can only use them once or twice a PvP game if you were lucky and got the power ammo. Throughout the first year of Destiny 2, things weren't looking too good. A lot needed fixing and no one really knew if the game would out soon. But on June 11th of 2018 at E3, Bungie announced their newest expansion. The teaser for the expansion showed Cayde 6, our Hunter Vanguard and comic relief of the game, surrounded by these barons, when a man named Uldren Sov shot and killed him. This caused a lot of hype for this expansion for 2 reasons. 1. Uldren Sov, a man from Destiny 1 who was always snarky towards our Guardian, killed the man that many people loved and cherished. And 2. This DLC was the first large expansion of Destiny 2. And in Destiny 1, the first large expansion completely changed the game and made it into what we love and remember today. As the summer went by, we got more great news that this expansion would be amazing, and when it came out, it was. Destiny 2 Forsaken completely changed the game for the better. During my playthrough of the campaign, I got all giddy because I had finally found that special Destiny feeling again. As I said before, every day I would hop on Destiny 1 and would never get tired out or annoyed from playing any of the game modes. But throughout the first year of Destiny 2, the game was so unbalanced and one-sided towards meta weapons that I could not complete any challenges without feeling like I needed a break. With this expansion and a new improved weapon system that came a few months before, I could finally play for hours and be completely satisfied and fresh to go again. Even after finishing the main campaign, there is so much more content to explore. For example, another planet unlocked. During the year was also the first time they attempted a season pass that gave content 3 times during the year. I wish that instead of making these story arcs little 3-month seasons, that instead they created a larger, more overarching expansion without time limits. But sadly, even though these seasons were not the best, this was the highest point of Destiny 2. On October 1st, 2019, Destiny 2 Shadowkeep, the next large expansion, came out. At first, this DLC also looked very promising because it brought back an old favorite character from Destiny 1, Eris Morn. It also brought back the Moon, a destination which has not been seen since the launch of Destiny 1. This DLC also brought a lot of hype along with it because it was the first DLC ever that Bungie made as a solo company without the help of Activision. This meant that they had complete creative freedom with no enforced deadlines from a larger company. People, myself included, had our hopes up for this DLC, but it did feel like something was missing. When we got our hands on it, it seemed just as good as Forsaken had been. One thing that Bungie did that shocked the community was by making the story about the Darkness, a race that has been hinted at ever since the original Destiny 1 campaign. The community took this as an amazing thing that Bungie did not use the Darkness as promotional material for the DLC. After a while though, the DLC and its content started to get a tiny bit flat. This happened because there wasn't too much content included after the main campaign was completed, but the real issues had to do with the new season passes. These seasons were the biggest downfall of the game to this point. Before, the seasons weren't too bad because they only focused on one game mode and ended up keeping their game modes after the season was completed. But these new seasons were 3-month-long mini-stories with a battle pass. This gave another thing to grind and collect. But the most efficient way to finish this was by doing bounties. The season-type format almost ruined the game for me at first. I didn't like the idea of having to only use one type of weapon to finish a bounty that wouldn't even give me an eighth of the season level. I know that this was more difficult for me because I was only playing solo at this point, which meant that the grind felt pointless and long. Throughout the year, the seasons tried to include more stories and lore, but in a very rushed manner. This was very disappointing for me because the amount of history and stories from these characters that were largely fleshed out within the lore were only just glanced over and never really deeply explored. From here, the content seemed to dry out even more, and the COVID-19 virus causing a global pandemic did not help anything. Around halfway through the year, I ended up leaving Destiny and started to play other games. This made me really sad because I had spent so many years of my life playing this one series and I had hoped that I could have continued. Even though we are living in hard times, I know that Bungie is trying their hardest with what they can do. And on June 9th, 2020, they announced their newest expansion and the next two that will come in the fall of 2021 and 2022. These expansions have great hope because they seem to further the story of Destiny a lot. These expansions also seem to dive into the stories and maybe the history of the Darkness, which seems to be the main story of Destiny. Personally, I have great faith that they will listen more to the community and their issues with the game. As of this recording, it has been around 3/4 of a month since Destiny 2 Beyond Light dropped, and so far the game has seemed to improve some issues, but also it has brought more issues into the light. Even though I took a break from this game, I've decided to come back and give it another try. I didn't buy the newest DLC this time around though, but I feel like this was a good play. I found it refreshing to be able to jump into the game and not feel like I have a time limit to get the rewards I paid for through the battle pass. I have noticed that even though Destiny is a game about grinding and spending time to get the loot you want, without the DLC I have partially found that Destiny feeling again. Without the newest DLC, I found myself being able to play the game again without really feeling worn out from the content loop, but this doesn't mean that it's perfect again. This year, there is the introduction of sunsetting. This means that any weapons that were made before the last 2 seasons, which started around 8 months ago, cannot be upgraded to the latest light levels. This makes the gear pretty much useless since you cannot use it most of the time. It is sometimes useful to use these weapons in activities that do not require light levels, like most of the PvP game modes, but it's still sad to find most of your weapons from the past useless in most of the activities inside of Destiny. I do wish instead that they would get rid of these weapons forever and bring in a whole new arsenal of brand new weapons, or use the same weapons but brought up to the new light levels. Another issue with the current sandbox are the new super abilities. This time, they made classes based on the Darkness, so the new abilities are all related to ice as an element. Overall, this was a very good move in my opinion, and I really enjoy the ideas of these new abilities, but they are very unbalanced in PvP combat. This does not mean that I want them nerfed completely or changed, but the fact that one person with those abilities can 1v1 another person in their super and win is too much. There are some ideas about fixes that have been brought up by the community, and I really hope that Bungie is working on a way to balance these supers. Even though sometimes these abilities can make the game hard to play, I don't find them getting in the way of the enjoyability of the overall game. At the beginning, I mentioned how I have a love-hate relationship with this game. I really want it to succeed and be the best it can, but sometimes it's hard to remember why I play it. So far, Bungie has been making moves in the right direction and has been changing their game for the better. I wish to be able to play Destiny 2 and have the same feeling of cheer and joy that I had during the final year of Destiny 1. These next few expansions could be what can bring this game back and really give it the popularity I believe it deserves. But only time can tell whether this game will make its glorious return from the ashes, or if it will sink down even further than before.